Hey y'all, I'm super excited to be sharing this adorable Easter basket cookie that I made last year. Excuse the focus throughout this video. I was new to cookie decorating videos at this time, and I didn't know about camera focus. Although it's annoying that the camera's focusing on my hand, it will show a good example to those who are just learning how to properly hold a piping bag. My pattern is far from perfect here, but I quickly learned that the more I practice this technique, the better I got at spacing my lines. Here I'm doing what is called the basket weaving technique. Notice how I'm starting out by touching the tip to the cookie. I apply a steady pressure to the bag as I pull straight down, and then release the pressure as I press the tip into the cookie to cut the line. This is such an impressive technique, and it can be practiced on wax paper by simply tracing your cookie onto paper and then placing wax paper on top. Spacing is very important here, so you may need to sketch, measure, or mark your cookie before starting. As you see, I just went for it, and considering I'd only tried this once or twice before, I think it worked out pretty well. Here, I'm using a little palette knife to clean up my line ends, just to give it a more clean edge. Looking back, I think the final cookie would have looked better if I would have left those areas, but practice makes progress, and every cookie after this showed improvement. I'm getting a little carried away now trying to tidy up my edges with my paintbrush, but in my opinion, details are everything, and making these little adjustments improve the overall look of my cookies. Here, I'm applying what I think is called a shell border to the bottom of the basket. I'm giving a heavy pressure to start and then decreasing the pressure as I pull out the tail. Excuse the overly technical terms. I don't use tips often, so my vocabulary is limited. Now I'm creating a spiral-looking border for the top of the basket, applying even pressure to the bag until I reach the end. Now for the bow. Here I'm outlining my bow with the same consistency I used for my basket weave, borders, and handle. I love the dramatic look I get when I use a thicker white outline for bows and then flood them with a different color. When you plan for an outline to show and stand out, it's important to be as neat as possible when pulling your lines. I do this by first touching the tip to the cookie, then I start applying a steady pressure to the bag as I pull upwards and away from my starting point. I don't watch where my tip is, I look ahead to where I'm going. I allow the line to fall as I aim for the landing point. Then, as I approach it, I start releasing the pressure on the bag and touch the tip to the cookie to end the line. Notice how I'm using my scribe to blend the lines here. Any peaks will stand out and look messy, so I'm careful to take my time and blend all of the points where the lines end. Now I'm going to make the handle of the basket using the same star tip I used for the bottom and top border. I use a steady pressure on the piping bag and do kind of a zigzaggy motion. I know, so technical with my terms. Okay, let's get back to that bow. By now, I have allowed a couple minutes for the outline of the bow to crust over. This technique is called flooding, but I'm actually using an outline consistency icing to flood the small areas because I want them to have a nice puffy look. Notice how I'm being very careful to flood the bow without covering my white outline. Using a tipless piping bag with a small hole will help to flood these small areas up close to the outline, but not on top of the outline. Once the area is fully flooded and I've used my scribe to pull the icing to all the edges, I will add even more icing to the space to create a pillowed look, which I call the puff. Notice how I only add extra icing to the center of the space, and I'm careful not to go too close to the outline. This is why using a thicker consistency icing is so important. If I were to use a thinner flood consistency, the icing would overflood the space, causing a flat, dull surface. There would be a good chance of it covering my outline, and it would probably crater as it dries, and we don't want a dull or flat bow. Now for what I think is the best part. This grass tip can be a bit of a challenge, but it's well worth the effort. I apply heavy pressure to the bag as I pull up, and then I shake the bag as I release the pressure. Notice also I tried to drop the grass in different directions to give a more realistic look. Excuse my hands again, but notice how I'm holding the bag with one hand and using my other hand to steady it. Now, it wouldn't be an Easter basket without that messy grass that gets all over the place and lots of sweets and treats inside. This is where things can get very unique and creative. I had so much fun choosing different candies and sprinkles to put inside of my Easter basket. You will want to work quickly here because the grass needs to be a stiff peak consistency icing that dries very quickly. If you find there isn't enough time to place your sprinkles before the grass dries, you can use a detail or outline consistency icing to glue them in place. Be sure to give everything a nice little poke to press them into the icing, and your Easter basket cookie will be complete. I hope you enjoyed watching me decorate this Easter basket sugar cookie, and I hope these techniques inspire you to try your own. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I'm always happy to help. Thanks for watching.